Hey, everybody, and welcome to today's episode of the Biometrics Leadership Lab. We are here to support you on your biometrics professional journey, giving you the tools and knowledge you need to grow from lead to leader. Today, we are focused on jobs. We're going to be discussing topics related to the current job market and how you can position yourself for success. I'm thrilled to bring my panel today, which includes perspectives from professional recruiters as well as internal talent acquisition. And we're going to look at the job market globally. Thank you for joining us live. And if you're watching a replay, thank you for taking the time to catch up. I just want to let you know you can ask questions on the event notice on LinkedIn, and we will see them while we are live. So we will try to answer them, but we can't respond in writing while we're live. So if we don't get to your question, watch the newsletter or follow-up comments to get your answer. Before we get started, we're going to do a round of introductions. I'm Amanda Cross, founder of Crossfield Coaching and Consulting, an executive biometrics consulting agency dedicated to helping small to mid-sized companies and teams deliver biometrics in a better way. With decades of experience in clinical research, from statistician to chief operating officer, I leverage my cross-functional experience and training to help teams integrate, communicate, and collaborate. I also help functional leaders professionally develop themselves and their teams. And now over to my panelists to introduce themselves, and we will start with Jane.
Oh, my name is Jane Stegman, and I am a principal recruiter with Cytal. Cytal is a CRO and software company for clinical research. I've been with Cytal 4 years, and I am located in Michigan. Before that, I was at another CRO, so I've got over 10 years in clinical research recruitment experience and over 23 years in recruitment experience and HR, and I'm super excited to be here.
Thanks so much. On to Daniel.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me. Daniel Cheetham, I am a headhunter in the biometric space. I've been in the industry for quite 15 years, almost to the month, actually. We should have a cake here with a candle. But so I've been in the industry for 15 years. Joined my previous firm in 2010, where I established their biometrics European division from scratch, grew that to its own independently functioning unit of the company, then transitioned to the US biometrics market in 2016 and actually relocated here. I'm in Boston in 2017, set up my previous company's US business and grew that to what it was when I left in February of this year, which was 3 offices across the US. So I left in February and then launched my own business, Astera Search. And at Astera, the goal is pretty straightforward. Is me focusing on my experience, which is biometrics, contract recruitment, permanent recruitment across the US, not just here in Boston. So all the locations. Normally, you'd find me bopping around the various conferences throughout the year. JSM, PharmaSug, and whatnot. This year, though, had to take a leave of absence from them because my wife and I welcomed our first child. So I'm getting by on a little bit of sleep. I'm well caffeinated. I'm getting by just about. But yeah, really pleased to be here. I'm looking forward to the chat.
Thanks so much, and welcome to the joys of parenthood.
Thank you.
And Mark, we'll turn it over to you.
Thanks for the invite, Amanda. My name is Mark O'Brien. I'm the founder and CEO of Warman O'Brien here in London, in the UK. It's a bit grey and overcast today. We set up the business 8 years ago this week. Myself and my wife, Caroline, she's our industry expert, I guess. She was an associate director of biostatistics at IQVIA for 15 years. So she knows a lot about biostatistics, and I have actually recruited within the same space for 22 years now. We actually met at the PSI conference back in 2005. So there's a bit of hence a connection there. So we set up the business 8 years ago. We're a global life sciences staffing company, of which biometrics is one of the fundamental core areas within our business. As I said, I'm based in the UK. We've had a rival within our family, but it's not a human being. It's actually a dog. So a new addition to the family. So that's my interesting fact.
And I see some of us are coming up on those magic numbers of once you hit 25 years, I always just say I stopped counting at 25. Lest I date myself too much. Okay, so we are going to jump right in with the conversation today and do a round robin, quick sentence or two from each of you on what you think the state of the market is today.
All right, I'll go ahead and start it off with the state of the market today is growing. So at the beginning of the year, we saw a little bit of a stagnant as business started to pick up, and more we're seeing a lot more increase in hiring, in new opportunities, and new clinical trials. So it's definitely an exciting time to be looking for work right now.
If I look at it from the UK perspective, I think biostatistics is hiring massively right now. That's one of the biggest growth areas. Although I do see programming is definitely a lot slower, and I don't know whether that's due to AI as such, but there's definitely a slowing down in the traditional statistical programming type of roles. But data management is somehow making a bit of a comeback as well. So it's kind of a tale of two halves. So it's, stats being very prominent, programming slowing down, but data management increasing as well.
Yeah, and I guess speaking from the US side, so we've seen a big shift, right? So we had the boom years of COVID, so 2020, 21, and 22, where it was really fluid. And I think everybody here today will probably agree that compensations shot up more than I think anybody has seen ever. That corrected at the end of 22 and kind of into 23 though. And which was influenced by external factors, external economic situations as well. And so we've seen a lot of layoffs. We've seen a lot of companies focusing on hiring for capability rather than capacity. So it is tough out there. But there are still companies that are hiring, that are growing and are getting some good results as well. So there are still opportunities out there.
I'm glad to hear that you mentioned COVID, Daniel, because that brings up the second question or topic, which is just how have roles shifted in a post-COVID world, right? You think about the experience you need for a role, the title and salary expectations. I think those professionals who kind of came of age during the boom years of COVID had a really unique opportunity that has traditionally not been the case in clinical research. Very quick gains in title and salary that maybe have shifted a little bit now. So what's your comments on what that looks like today?
Yeah, I think we could probably have a show just about this one topic. Right? We could talk. I think we could talk about this for hours. So overnight, I think in March, was it March or April 2020, where everybody had to go home. I remember at my previous firm, we were sending our recruiters back with actual tower computers because we didn't have laptops at the time. So people were going home with the towers because it was almost an emergency. And I think every company had to really think on their feet and pivot to do that as well. I think that now has come back around where most companies, unless you're in a lab, we're working remotely over the COVID years. Now we've seen a shift back to being at least hybrid. I think the days of fully on site 5 days a week are behind us. There are some companies that are sticking with that, but I think really as a general rule that those are behind us. But now, companies are, especially on the sponsor side, pharma, biotech, med device, they are now asking people to go back to the office at least 2-3 days per week. So that's a big shift, and I think compensations as well. I'll be interested in James' experience with this, working on the internal side. But yeah, the real raise in compensations that we saw over the COVID years, where it was really competitive, that's now leveled out a bit. I might even say that it's probably dipped down a little bit, and salaries have perhaps dipped a touch too. But yeah, interested in your thoughts and what you're seeing.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely. I'm ready to jump in on this topic as well. Interesting, right? I mean, none of us had been through a global pandemic and it's like all hands on deck. We've got to get, the vaccine approved and whatnot. So yeah, those salaries were skyrocketing, right? Promotions, or, you know, people being put in roles that, you know, maybe they weren't quite at that level, but would get to that level and whatnot. So now what we're seeing is a lot of those roles are gone, and so those candidates are now looking for their next role, and you know, we all can kind of assess that. You know, through our career, you always hope for that increase in income, right? You always want that. Oh, I want at least this percentage of an increase in my salary if I'm moving companies. Well, in today's world, you're not seeing that so much, because those salaries from COVID, as we say, like the pandemic salaries, are gone, right? And they weren't realistic. They were temporary. And so now it is a challenge where it's like, you know, you're used to living on a certain income, right? Because you've gotten that increase, and now, you know, I'm seeing that candidates are really, you have to reassess what are you looking for in your next role? Are you looking for a career, or is this your next paycheck, right? And so in this market, because it is so competitive, people, you know, we want people that are looking for a career, that really, you know, are doing the research in the company and the roles and whatnot. So going into that question on salaries, yes, the COVID salaries are not around as much, if any, really. And you know, really the hard part is just assessing that and determining, you know, looking at your budget as a candidate, what can myself and my family live on, right? Do I have to have that wild salary of 40,000 more or 30,000 more, right? And so it's a challenge, right? But I'm seeing it all the time, where those COVID roles, first of all, they didn't last, right? Because it was kind of a all hands on deck. Let's just get this done. And so now it's kind of back to our reality of a more realistic salary. And so really, I would say for all of you out there that are looking for positions, it's just, you know, be open to those conversations of, you know, maybe it's not all about that number. What's it going to do for your career? Because that amazing COVID salary, you don't have it anymore, right? That's gone. So
Mark, what's your take on it in Europe? You seeing something different?
Yeah, I think my perspective is more on, obviously with COVID, everyone started work from home, and then with bigger pharma, now everyone bringing back to the office, even on a hybrid basis. And even if you people got women on maternity leave and stuff like that, now they've been brought back into office. That's going to be a big challenge of them with moving house in the last few years. They're now not very commutable to where they're currently working. And then the change, now we're having to be back in the office. That's putting a lot of pressure on them to whether they can do that. So that kind of open up other opportunities for other, whether it be CROs or smaller companies who are a bit more agile than some of the bigger farmers who are wanting people back on a hybrid basis. So that's definitely creating challenges for the people that are working for some of the bigger ones, as against opportunities then for maybe the more smaller to medium-sized companies. So that's the one thing I've seen since post-COVID, with the change between the working from home and hybrid opportunities.
And I think that's what I see, is that the larger the company and the more big pharma it is, the more likely you're going to find yourself going back in house, or maybe if you're working for biotech where everybody's local. CROs, for me, remain king in flexibility and options in terms of what that looks like. Okay, so what have you noticed shifting over the past 6 to 12 months? And if you look into your crystal ball, what do you see it looking like in 12 months from now?
I think one of the biggest things I can see is the time to hire. It's very challenging from an agency perspective when you're managing the candidate experience from when you originally speak to them, when you screen them, qualify them, when you're talking about a specific opportunity, you're selling them the opportunity of working for this big pharma, CRO, biotech, and then the journey then on the candidate experience, going from when you submit the candidate to when you get feedback, the time to go for interview, offer, etc. It's, for whatever different reasons, it's taking a lot longer to hire that person. And that's especially in a passive candidate, a lot of passive candidates who are worried about moving roles because there's not as many opportunities. they're hesitant. They're worried then that they're because it's taking so long for them to move from between screening the candidate to offer, that they're hesitant to actually shifting in the first place. So that's the one worry I have, is the fact that it's taking a lot longer to get approval, whether they're getting a bigger bonus and stuff like that, and you have to get through a lot more stages and hoops to get the actual offer to make it attractive for somebody to move to another company. So that's definitely one thing I've seen from in the last few months compared to previously, when it was a lot easier to get candidates at offer stage.
Yeah, it's interesting that, and again, I'd be interested in Jane's perspective, given her role. But I'm seeing that as well here in the US. Is time to hire, the recruitment process, and this may well be because of the COVID years versus the kind of years we're at now, right? Is that people do have to spend more time reviewing candidates and lobbying for spend. For if it's a permanent hire, for example, budgets are tighter on the client side, so it takes more for approvals. Maybe 2 or 3 more steps in the business to make a hire. So that's certainly something that we're seeing here in the US. But it's interesting you mentioned that candidate experience. But candidate experience has always been something I've really worked on with my clients and helped with candidates, because if a candidate has 2 positions they're considering, more often than not, candidate experience can be just that one bit that raises one opportunity versus another, and it can just be feedback on time and speed of process, and as simple as that. So I've seen that as well. But I guess a quick other word on what I've seen over the last 6 to 12 months. And I think this next bit is down to the outsourcing that we're seeing, or offshoring, should I say. So a lot of positions from here in the US have been offshored to lower cost countries. There's some big farmers that have actually changed their global HQs from locations in the US to other locations in lower cost countries. So I'm seeing that different positions are being hired or focused on more in the US now. And those tend to be positions that are more project oversight orientated. So I'm interested in your thoughts on that as well.
Yeah, I'm just going to spin here and say, I think that the comment about the candidate experience is so accurate, because if you think about it, it's like the early days of a relationship, right? Everybody's on their best behavior and they're doing their best to woo you. And if a company can't do a good job wooing you and they really want you to join them, what is that? It kind of raises a red flag maybe about what it might be like to work there. I'm going to shift, and we'll give Jane an opportunity to jump on this, because I think I'm going to ask some really pointed questions since you're an internal recruiter. But what is happening with AI and the recruitment and hiring process? Because I think the people I talk to, you have this vision of sending your CV in and it goes into the AI queue, and 30 seconds later you're rejected. So what's really going on when we apply for a job these days?
All right. So really good question. We hear AI all over right now, right? It's huge. It's making some huge progress. And really what it comes down to is AI is helping us streamline our process as recruiters, right? Just like AI is helping for a lot of things. And so what I would say is just even tag teaming on that candidate experience or company experience. It goes both ways, right? If you're the candidate, you have one time for that first impression, just like a company does. You have one time for that first impression. So I would definitely say that that's key. Now, on the AI changing the recruitment process. Okay. One thing that I will say is that don't assume that every company uses Teams or Zoom for your interview, right? More and more companies are using other sources to screen their candidates, and there may be an AI touch to it. There may not be, but it's ever evolving. So in that sense, I would say you definitely want to be open to the fact that companies that you are looking to join are using AI. And as far as the AI, like scanning resumes in the system and deleting I can't speak to that because we don't do that here at Sitel. I personally look at every CV that I'm considering, and so it's a human being looking at it. But we have to be open to it, right? I mean, I would definitely encourage anyone looking out there that you've got to be well versed in AI. It's not going anywhere. So you really need to be above and beyond in that, and add that to your CV because it is huge. And so how is that changing the recruitment and hiring process? Basically what it is it's streamlining. Now, in our sense, aside from offshoring, like we mentioned, right? AI is streamlining the process. So my time to fill a role, say like in the US, has extremely been cut versus having to go with the offshoring, which can be a challenge, right? We've got 60-day notice periods, we've got 90-day notice periods, but I think people need to be open to AI and the recruitment process. I can tell you that like I mentioned, companies are using AI, right? So if you get an invite for an interview and there's an AI link, you need to be open to it. It's not fraud, right? Now, could be, and that's something that we want to look at as well, obviously in our world, but I think that we just need to be educated in it. And so for me, I feel like it's really streamlining the process, and definitely would just, my goal here is just to share that you need to educate yourself in AI because it's not going anywhere.
Mark, what's been your experience with AI on the recruitment process?
Yeah, I think there's pros and cons, I guess. Like we get a lot of candidates who come to us and they get frustrated that a lot of times it's online portals that they send their CV to, or they apply on LinkedIn, etc., and they get an instant rejection or within 30 seconds. And then they're frustrated because they think they're suitable. They feel like they're suitable for the role. They don't have an opportunity to speak to somebody, and there's no contact person on the advert, for example. So yeah, it's a lot of times when dealing with a specialist agency like ourselves, we feel like we can add a lot of value because we can influence the outcome, and whether we have a direct line within the hiring manager or how well we know that client and company, it gives us an opportunity to actually let the client know, listen, there are some candidates that maybe you haven't had a look at. Some of the bigger companies are talent acquisition are working with 10, 20, 50, hundreds of roles, and they don't know each area in depth as someone like ourselves. So that gives us a bit of an advantage where we can actually influence the outcome with getting candidates over. So from an AI perspective, yes, it's going to streamline the process. It's making it quicker. If you've got innovative technology, that doesn't make it easier from a recruitment agency and also from internally. But certainly from an influence and advise and consult, that's definitely something that we can help with candidates on that journey as well, so that they don't feel like they've been left out. But yeah, there's definitely lots of pros and cons with using AI.
So I just want to jump back to the time to hire question, because we actually have a comment asking this question. And Daniel and Mark both said it seems to be increasing, and Jane said hers is decreasing. So what do you think is actually the average time to hire right now?
Depends on the location, right?
Well, let's get a US and a Europe perspective on it.
I mean, US, I could, right now I'm averaging 36 days time to hire, give or take. And then Europe, we're looking at more like 45, 47 days.
So that's from opening the role to having your candidate identified and offer accepted.
Right.
Yeah, so I'd say for, and again, it really varies based on the role, right? So if you're looking at an office-based position in one of the hub locations, an estimated time to hire for that one I normally suggest to my clients is about 10 weeks from role sign off through to having the person start. Again, we're talking about a 2-week notice period here in the US. Very different with what it is in mainland Europe. I remember those days. But yeah, so approximately 10 weeks, give or take. But I mean, generally I'm seeing that increase, and that not being because of challenges finding candidates, but being because of slightly slower recruitment processes, tacking on maybe an extra week or two onto a recruitment process or an interview process that might sorry, might have taken a bit shorter. That's the bit that I'm seeing extend the time to hire.
Yeah, Europe or UK and Europe is quite similar in the fact that it's anything from 2 to 3 months, and that's not even before they get handed their notice and have a signed contract. So obviously varies from the time of year as well. Obviously summertime was just finishing now, so we've had opportunities out for a couple of months, and we're only now getting offers and signatures on some of the roles as well. So that obviously had a delaying, it had a bit of an impact. So yeah, it's at least 2 months for a majority of roles. It varies from client to client. If there's multiple roles, it can take a bit longer. If it's only a one-off role where you've got direct contact with the hiring manager, that can speed up the process, because sometimes with some companies you have an opportunity to speak to the hiring manager, and some other companies you don't have any contact with the hiring manager. You're trying to understand what the client's looking for, and that can delay the process because you're trying to understand what the client's looking for. And then when you're sending candidates, sometimes it can be a bit longer getting feedback and also understanding what the client's looking for. So yeah, it varies from the relationship you have with the client as well, between when you actually get the role on and when you fill the role.
All right, we're going to jump to, from your perspective, internal talent acquisition and external recruiters. What are you really looking for with candidates?
I'll jump in. I think I'm next. What are we really looking for? Okay, so I can speak for myself and the, a lot of the pharma companies that I represent here at Sitel, and really we look for people that are looking for the next home, not necessarily, chasing that paycheck per se. We're looking for someone. When I do an initial screening interview as the recruiter, is we look for people that have researched our company, done their due diligence, and candidates that are really well versed in our job description, in the job they applied for, so that when I ask, why did you apply, or why do you feel you would be a good candidate for this role, they can explain that in a good manner, so that that just makes sense, right? You have to separate yourself. So we're looking for those candidates that have those extra skills that maybe, like I mentioned, having AI on their CV. It just really, we're looking for someone that can be flexible and be good working in an ever-changing environment, right? We always say that, I feel like. So that's what I would say is just, aside from what your CV looks like, I would say is a matter of just doing your due diligence and also just being prepared to answer those questions that are on your CV, right?
Yeah, the do's and don'ts, again, is probably something we could use a whole hour talking about.
I know, right? We could.
Maybe we will.
Yeah,
Right?
happy to come back another time. But I think from an external standpoint, it's a funnel. So the first part of the funnel, which is obviously the widest bit, is we're looking for job tenures. We're looking for what companies they've worked with. Do they have the right skills and experience on a CV at a very kind of high level? And then the next layer or next level in the funnel is going to be when we're speaking with them. When we as external recruiters, when we're interviewing candidates, do they have the right technical skills? And then also, do they have the right soft skills, communication ability, and the other pieces that the client's looking for? And then I guess the next level down would be those motivators that Jane was mentioning then, right? A real red flag for me whenever I'm speaking to somebody is when I ask somebody about their motivators in the past for any job changes they've had. If they've had a bit of a jumpy background, naturally you want to talk about it. And they say, well, I just moved because I wanted a promotion, or they were offering me an extra 20 grand or something like that. That's a real red flag. And yes, you could probably introduce them to your client. And yes, they might even get an interview because they might have a strong background. And maybe they even might get the job, but the chances are that they probably jump on again after then. So which we don't want to have as an external recruiter with our clients. So that's typically the kind of order that we look for, or certainly that I look for. How about you, Mark?
I think for candidates is particularly biostatisticians, they're not very comfortable selling themselves, I guess. So I feel like I've been doing it for over 20 years. You do speak to a lot of candidates, and it's almost like they'll say they've done everything, but when you look at their CV, it's not demonstrated on the CV. It's very job responsibility focused. They don't mention about their personal profile, what are the key attributes. They don't mention about their key achievements within the role. So we spend a fair bit of time working with a candidate to help them with their CV, and obviously not lying on the CV, but also then helping with a cover sheet if the client's looking for a cover sheet. And that's when you talk about the motivations and understand how suitable they are for the role. Why would they think they would be suitable for the role? So get them thinking a bit more as well, and then share that both CV and cover sheet with the client. So and then demonstrating that you have spent a lot of time with the candidate, you understand their true motivation, you understand why they're interested in the role, and then more often than not, then they do tend to get interviews because you spend a lot of time with them initially, and candidates are grateful for it. And when you give them constructive feedback, they're actually they don't feel bad that you're telling them how to help their CV, and even if they've been there for 10 or 20 years. So they're quite complimentary in the fact that you are giving some good advice and that benefits from them. And a lot of them haven't interviewed for 5, 10 years, 15 years. So once even you get through the CV stage or the resume stage, is helping with to prepare for an interview, because it's very easy to just submit the candidate and hope for the best. But it's a lot of time then actually don't assume that because they've been in industry for that length of time that they're very comfortable doing interviews. So it's spending a lot of time going through the interview process with them, understanding who's going to be on the interview panel. Is it technical? Is it competency-based, like what Daniel said? So you do spend a lot of time with them understanding what they're looking for and understanding what the client's truly looking for as well. And then you have a good idea to have a good opportunity to get in from CV to interview.
Yeah, and go ahead.
Sorry.
No, I was just saying, the thing about the money is, people want a job for money, right? I mean, obviously, we all know that. So I think that the more, as I used to have a boss, and he would say, they don't call it work and pay you for nothing, right? So, it's obviously it's a motivating factor. But I think if you accept that at baseline and then position yourself around that, why are you looking for a new job? Like, what's lacking in your current job once you take away $5,000, or what are you looking to gain, or just where you're trying to put yourself? Because we work in such a great industry where what we do every day is really making lives better for people. So it seems very easy to tell your story about why you like working in this industry and what you want to accomplish beyond just, I'm looking for another paycheck. And, so I think the more people can position themselves to do that, the better off they will be.
Yeah, and a little, I guess, word of advice as well to anybody who is looking for a job is make some connections with good recruiters, because a good recruiter, like Mark said, will help with your CV, will help with interview preparation. They'll guide you through offer negotiation and anything else that they will lobby for you. And the good thing about it is that that's totally free. Candidates don't pay for that. That's the total free service. There are some companies out there, and again, this is a bit of advice I'd like to share. There are some companies out there that are kind of preying on people. I was even contacted by one today, obviously not looking at my LinkedIn profile correctly, where they're offering to write my resume, send my resume to job applications, and charge me anything up to like $1,000 a month for the privilege. So yeah, make some friends and some connections with good recruiters. Don't pay for it, because it's you don't need to.
So, by the way, I'll do that for you, Daniel, for just $800 a month. So, and I think this is going to bring us really to the next question, is because there's a lot of different information flowing even in this conversation based on your perspective about how you get in front of people and how you get in front of jobs, right? Because sometimes you're just sending your resume off into the abyss. Sometimes you're going through a recruiter, but companies have a little bit tighter budgets, so maybe they're not willing to work with an external recruiter. So it's a lot of how you position yourself and who you know. And so the question is, how do you find roles that aren't even posted so that you kind of have an inside edge on finding that role? And I think you guys have different perspectives because you're coming at it from different angles. So would love to hear the thoughts here.
I think, because I've been doing it for so long, you do obviously speak to candidates and have met candidates at conferences over the years. So you do build up that relationship. So a lot of the candidates we speak to are passive candidates. They're not actively looking. So, but they do tell you, listen, if a role comes in that's a associate director role, I'd be certainly interested in it. So that's where you understand, even when they're passively looking, what they would actually, if they were looking to move, what would that look like? So you build up a talent pool of candidates that if the right role worked for them, what would that look like? So I think it's building that relationship with a specialist recruitment agency will help you find that the dream role for you. And even if you're not actively looking, and just get some industry insights. What's the market like? What are the salaries like at the moment? If it's a contract role, what are the rates like? Understanding about the different legislation in each country, whether it be the UK about IR35 and the legislation across other different countries. So I think obviously from our perspective, from Daniel and I, from external, is like building that relationship with a specialist recruitment agency. That will give you an edge when you're actually applying for roles. So when you are actively looking for new role, and you'd be surprised, a lot of candidates we find roles were never actively looking in the first place. It's only when you present a role to them and actually goes, actually that's exactly what I'm looking for, and then that you guide them through the process of how to apply for the role.
So there are lots of recruiters out there, obviously, but when a recruiter calls you, and they're a trusted recruiter, hopefully there's somebody you do have a relationship with. When they call you to have a catch up, it's a worthwhile conversation. It is definitely a worthwhile conversation. And as Mark said, it means that recruiter can then keep you in mind effectively when something comes up that is pre-job posting, for example. So those conversations that I know that I've had some in the past where candidates are questioning why are we speaking, but it is to help with that familiarity, so we can think, oh yeah, yes, that person, they'd be perfect for that role that hasn't been posted yet.
Sorry, just one more thing. A lot of times clients who we speak to, they're not advertising or mentioning a role to us. It's only when we go to them and say, listen, I have this candidate with this X amount of experience within oncology or something like that. And that's only when they start thinking about, actually, I could do with something like this. I know how difficult it is to find those people. So that's always one of the advantages of when we're working with clients or prospective clients, is having top talent available with specific skill sets that are quite difficult to find.
I agree with everything that was just said, absolutely. And the fact that really it's all about the connections. I can't stress that enough. It really is exactly like what Daniel had said, and just being, connected with a good recruiter, and the fact that these roles do pop up. They pop, I so many times I would say to candidates, I might not have a fit for you today, and then 2 days from now I call them and I'm like, we just got this opportunity. You'd be perfect for it. And so that's where you get that in, right? And so then all of the applicants, they'll get declined because you already have your in, right? So it's really key to have those connections and have those touch base calls, as Daniel mentioned, and really be in tune to, look at what companies you want to work for that align with your personal values, right? And then go from there and keep those connections going, so that when those roles come about, you're ready. It's a whole process. The whole job search process is a full-time job, I feel like, these days, if you're looking, right? And if you're, obviously without work, it becomes a full-time job. And so it's, how many connections can I connect with today? And hey, and keeping organized, so that in that sense that, so many times also that the fact that, hey, I wasn't even looking and Jane called and this would be ideal, right? It's all about those connections.
So I'm going to tie a couple threads together and make a couple points, and then we have a couple questions that I want to throw into the mix here. So one, when I'm leading biometrics teams, I never want them to be talking to recruiters, right? Because I don't want them to get snagged away. But I think as a leader of a team, you have to be aware that these calls are going to happen. Your team is going to be being talked to, and make sure you have an environment that they actually want to stay at, as opposed to being willing to pick up the phone to talk to that recruiter. On the other hand, if you're looking for a job, or you just want to keep aware of what's going on, find a few trusted recruiters that you have regular catch-ups with. I personally am not a fan of talking to 17 different recruiters at the same time, because you get a lot of overlap, and you want people who know you and know what you're doing. But take the time to pick up the phone, or answer their LinkedIn message, or answer their email, because you never know, at some day they're going to think of you, or you're going to need them and you're going to think of them. And so these connections and the relationships that you build over time really matter. And likewise, if you're an individual contributor and you're at a conference, don't be scared of the recruiters who are at the booths with the companies. Have a chat and just see what they have to say and learn about the company, because one good impression that you make at a conference can really open some doors for you in the future. The questions that we have are
just on that as well, with the conferences and stuff. You mentioned it. I can't emphasize how important they are on a person's CV, not just obviously their job description at the end. I presented at a conference, I've exhibited, etc. It's about networking and building up your brand, relationships, reputation, etc. At a conference, you meet be recruiters or even companies. You see the same faces the whole time, and you build that trust with those recruiters, or and vice versa. When everybody works from home now, so you don't get to meet with lots of your fellow employees and that on a day-to-day basis. So going to a conference, presenting, it opens up your eyes. It really elevates you on a resume, and also the fact that you can have an opportunity to present and actually meet industry peers as well. So there's a lot of benefits of going to a conference like PSI, Fuse, SCDM, or Pharma within the kind of biometric space.
Yeah, and I would say go ahead, Daniel.
Oh, sorry, I was just going to say that I'd even say that candidates even need to almost act as their own recruiter in some way, right? They need to be networking proactively. So at these conferences, as you said, Mark, they need to be proactively making connections, and depending on where they're at with their career, the connections they've made over the years, they could leverage in the future. I had an industry friend quite recently who found herself a job by essentially doing a recruiter's job, by going around and speaking to all the CMOs that she's met throughout her career, asking if that CMO knew anybody who could use her, and she ended up finding herself a position. So that does work as well. I think making it multi-channel, so speak to recruiters, apply to job boards, and also you do your own kind of networking and leveraging your own relationship through conferences and other means as well.
Yeah, and I was just gonna say, and know your strengths, right? If you're highly technical, don't be afraid to lean into being a highly technical SME. If you are a great people manager, don't be afraid to lean into being a people manager and what sets you apart there. Okay, so questions that have come in, which I think are very interesting. One person has said they have a hard time locating recruiters that will respond back.
You mean candidates getting ghosted? Which, yeah, it's a common thread across the industry. There's obviously 40,000 recruitment agencies in the UK alone, I think. I'm not sure how many is in the US. So yeah, it's kind of, how do you build that relationship with one or two or three agencies that actually will respond to you? And I'm sure most of us are guilty in some respect of doing that. And yeah, that's one of the biggest things at the moment, especially when talking about the candidate journey, because candidates won't forget, and yeah, you might want them. They might become a hiring manager at some point, and if you've ghosted them in the first place, then that could go against you.
Yeah, it's tough, right? I mean, our industry, there's a lot of people out of work right now, and so we're getting. I mean, it's common 300, 400 applicants for a role. Right. And so it's tough for all of us as recruiters to keep up. Right. And so in that sense, though, it goes along the lines again of separating yourself. Right. It is just like, OK, if you apply for a job, find out who the recruiter is, email them directly. Right. I mean, look at the company. Oh, I know so-and-so that works there. Let me reach out to them. And maybe I can get in with that recruiter there and whatnot. So it is tough. And really, as Mark said, we're all guilty of it. I'm one of these people that I can't stand notification like on my phone or LinkedIn. So, I try very hard to respond to everyone that I can, but it is tough. It's the amount of contact like that we get contacted on is so extreme. You'd have to work almost 24 hours to respond.
Yeah, I think with the best will in the world, you can't reply to absolutely everybody. And if you were perhaps to order the responses that you would give as an internal or an external recruiter, if you have maybe a message from somebody on LinkedIn saying, "Hi, do you have any jobs for me?" Are you likely to respond to that versus something that is a bit more engaging and outlines your situation and there's a bit more effort put into it? You're going to respond to that other one first. So my advice there to getting responses from internal, external, anybody, anybody at all in your network, is to put some real thought into the messages and emails or whatever you're sending. Because if you just say, do you have any jobs for me? Chances are you might not get responded to.
Agreed.
Just from a Mark and Daniel perspective, if somebody contacts you because they are definitely wanting to find a new job and they're just trying to reach out to recruiters, is it best for them to suggest, hey, do you have 20 minutes that we can have a chat and we can learn about each other? Is it best to email blind? Like, how do you suggest that you engage?
Well, my phone's always available. Yeah, so pick up the phone. Phone first is how I used to train when I was at my last firm. So always phone first. But yes, I mean, email as well. I treat my inbox like a bit of a to-do list. So send me an email and I will get to it at some point. I guess caveated with if there's perhaps somebody who maybe really isn't in industry just yet and maybe looking to make their way into industry, I might perhaps point them in a certain direction. But us as external headhunters, whilst I'd love to speak to everybody who is looking to make their first break into industry, it can be difficult to spend half an hour to an hour on the phone with speaking to that person.
Yeah, certainly if you're breaking into industries, we try and share a lot of information from, say, the PSI, and they have their one-day courses where they're trying to get people into the industry from medical statisticians, for example. So for our perspective, it's we can do as much as we can from a junior perspective, but generally, the more information, as like Daniel alluded to, the more information you can share with the recruiter about, I've seen an advert, I'm applying for a director of statistics, here's my CV or my LinkedIn profile. If you don't have an up-to-date CV, could we have a chat about the market? I understand I might not have everything you're looking for, but I would be keen to speak to somebody. So ideally, you want to try and find their email address or telephone number and contact them directly. So sometimes if you're applying to an ad, sometimes it might get lost, for example, and then you might not get a response. So if there is a recruiter name, number, etc., try and be proactive and contact person, you're more likely to get a response. And the more information you put on why you're looking for a new role, the more chance you're going to get a more of a prompt reply.
And for me, the conversation around if you're trying to break into industry, it's a whole nother conversation. I think we could have a whole nother conversation around that, because I think especially if you're in a high cost market, if you're in the UK, you're in the US, it is really hard right now. I mean, despite growing jobs and more money flowing into industry, it's hard to find roles in some of these high cost regions right now because of where the pendulum is on the offshoring. And so if you don't have that industry experience, it's a whole different strategy about how you're going to stand out in that market, which is a different conversation, but one I just wanted to say that, it depends on where you're trying to break in. The other question that we had. I
tend to just tell them, here's a list of the companies that a lot of them are CROs like Cytel, Aviramed, and others that Fastar that tend to hire academies or hire juniors, and they don't tend to use agencies like ourselves, but apply directly. I don't give them specific names of people. It depends, but normally then that gives them a starting point about the direction about where to apply to roles directly, especially when they're junior candidates without industry experience. So that's the starting point.
Be open to roles that aren't necessarily, right in line with what you want to do. The goal is to get your foot in the door.
Yeah.
Right. Once your foot is in the door, and then you can start building up. Okay, this is what I've done. This is what I want to do. What do I need to do to get to that level? Right. Maybe you're a project associate, but you want to get to that biostatistician level. Once you're in the company, it's a lot easier to get those jobs, right? So it's really all, and that's what I say to all of, anyone that comes to me without that industry experience and that I meet with all my referrals from employees and I try to really help and get them to, hey, it may feel like a step back, but it gets your foot in the door for you to really grow your career.
I'm going to pull that thread on what Jane just said, and then I'm going to go into the next question. But the thread that Jane just said is she talks to her referrals from internal employees. So if you're trying to break into a company, find out who you know in that company and look to get them to help you, to refer you to that role. Because I know from leading teams and hiring people and just other folks I've advised on finding jobs, the internal referral is a really strong referral to getting that recruiter to talk to you back, to call you back. Okay, so also, but going back to recruiters, earlier we were talking about having catch-up calls and staying connected with recruiters. And the question is, if you're actively seeking a new role, how often should you be catching up with your recruiter, and how often should you be speaking to them?
If you're actively looking for a new role on a weekly basis, if you're applying for roles, if the consultant is screening you and putting you forward for opportunities, then once a week you should be, even if you don't have that much information, even if you don't have a feedback from the hiring manager because for whatever reason they haven't come back to you, you still need to speak to the candidate. Even if you just say, listen, I'm still there for you, I'm still thinking about you. So normally on a weekly basis, you should be, even if it's a 5-minute call, just touching base and letting you know that you're still thinking of them and they're still in the process.
Yeah, absolutely. I think if there's a candidate in process, you want to make sure that we as recruiters, we're speaking with them, but also as a candidate, feel free to reach out to the recruiter. If you haven't heard from them for a few days, reach out to them. I think if a recruiter is not yet representing said candidate to a position, and it is more of a touch base, I think a conversation every 3 to 4 weeks probably makes sense. I think any more than that might be overkill. Any less than that, then you don't want to slip between the cracks. I think every monthly would probably work.
Okay. Yeah, I agree with both, really. I mean, I think if you're active and, weekly is great. If you're passively looking or, just for that perfect role type thing, every few weeks. But it's a matter of, and talk to your recruiter on that. Would it be okay if I touch base with you, every Monday just to check in to see if there's any new roles, type thing?
Do you think it's best to take a targeted approach and find 2 or 3 or however many recruiters, if we're talking about external recruiters, to really work them? Or should you just send your CV out to 40,000 recruitment agencies in the UK? Actually, I don't recommend that, but but where's the line in terms of, I guess, to Mark and Daniel really specifically, what do you like, where's your comfort line with how many other agencies your candidates are working with?
I mean, from my perspective, ideally we want to have exclusivity with a candidate. If it's a candidate we think we can find them a role, then we would want to get exclusivity with that candidate. We talk them about what are the opportunities. If we feel there's good opportunities for them, then it's depending on how far down the process as far as how quick they want to find a role. And if you feel you've given enough opportunities, then that they will be happy to work with you before they look at any other opportunities, because you don't want to get in a bit of a fight with other recruiters or direct, where you're sending the CV to the same role, to the same portal, and there's ownership issues, etc., etc. So ideally, if you can get exclusivity with candidates, that helps the recruiter, that you're confident you can find them a role. But then the candidate then needs to make sure they can trust that they're working with the right recruiter, and they have they're working with them rather than against them to get the right role. So I think if you have build a relationship with recruiters, stick with one, ideally 2 or 3, no more than that. And it depends obviously how well you know that recruiter. If they've recommended, how long have they been in an industry? Are you speaking to the same person the whole time? A lot of times within recruiters, this person always keeps changing, so you never speak to the same person the whole time. So ideally build that relationship with one recruiter, ideally 2 or 3 at a max. And then that should give you enough broad scope about most of the opportunities within that particular location.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think what a candidate would want to avoid is their CV being with every recruiter out there, because some recruiters just really aren't that great and don't have the relationships and don't have the experience and haven't been in the industry really long enough to really understand it and get it. I think the advice that I normally give the candidates and my industry friends that I work with, that I will absolutely come to you if I have a position that's for you. If you see a position that you'd be interested in, I'm happy to have a chat with you about it. Chances are I know somebody there. If I don't, I'll suggest that I'll give you some tips as to how you could approach them directly, and we could talk about it, even if I don't stand to benefit from it. I think the competitiveness in the market at the moment, from a candidate's perspective, they need to be making sure they have every single opportunity to be successful in their search. I'd love to have an opportunity to represent the candidate to every single role out there. I'd be a very rich man. But no, the realistic approach is I will do my best to network and get you considered. But if I don't know anybody over there, then I'll give you some tips.
Okay, we are having a really wide-ranging and very good discussion, and we're not getting through half of the topics that we had planned. So I'm going to do just 2 more quick questions, and perhaps I'll bring this panel back for a part 2, because I think there were some really good topics that we didn't get to. So watch this space to see how we'll cover the rest. But real quick, each of you give me your biggest red flag from a candidate or your biggest green flag. Like, what do you really want to see and what do you never want to see?
This is another one that we could probably spend a whole hour talking about, right?
Just one.
For me, I'll jump in first. It's the job hoppiness. So if somebody has hopped jobs every year, it's unavoidable in some instances, especially now when there's been so many layoffs, right? And I get that, but that's part of the conversation we'll have with them. But for me, job hops, unexplained job hops. If you can't explain it other than if you say it's just because I wanted more money or wanted a promotion, then that's the concern.
So back in the day, we used to say, do you really have 10 years of experience, or do you have 1 year of experience at 10 different companies? And what does that really mean?
Exactly it. Right. You really have to peel that back. And I agree. Definitely. The job jumping, I think, or short term. I understand some people just only want to work contract and that's their thing. And then be able to really explain that in a very detailed explanation. But I think that is huge, I think. And just also not having a CV that truly matches really what your skill set is. Does it match your LinkedIn? Right? Is it completely different? Is it not updated? Is, all of that, I would say.
I think the one thing is a lot of candidates on top of their resume or CV, they put an overview of key skills and what they've been doing. And then in their actual roles, it's so basic. You don't actually know when they've done a specific role and for how long, whether they've worked in a phase 2 or 3 clinical trial, it's worked in submissions. It's very on the top and a neat summary. But then when you actually try to drill down on where they've worked in each role, it's not in enough detail. It doesn't talk about their achievements within that specific role. So you never get a true picture of what they've actually done. And yes, you don't want to have everything on the CV because you want to talk it through an interview, but there needs to be enough detail, because if you're speaking only to a talent acquisition rather than a hiring manager, that person would maybe just looking at the key things within the resume. And if it's not on there, you might not get past that. And then it's our opportunity and challenge to make sure we get in front of the hiring manager. So that's why having much detail on your CV makes a big difference. So
my bugaboo about CVs is when they read like a job description, right? If you just copy and paste your job description into your CV as what your experience was at that company, for me, it's meaningless, especially if you haven't been there very long. I know you haven't done every single thing that's in your job description because you just physically, you just realistically didn't even have enough time, but you're also not taking an achievement-based approach to it, right? So if I'll just speak to a statistics example, but if your job description says oversee production and delivery of TFLs, okay, well, that's on there. That's what I expect to see. But what fantastic project did you lead? Did you deliver a phase 3 analysis in a very short time frame with a large number of outputs? Like that's an achievement tied to that job description. So I always just like to see people focus.
I think from candidates who come from a CRO background, a lot of times when they send their CV, it's actually the company CV, and it's very noticeable. And it's like, listen, if I'm trying to find your role, we need to kind of make it more individual and more about you rather than a very generic companies type of CV. And and even I think half of it is if you've got a very good LinkedIn profile, that makes a massive difference, because you can just apply and use that as a starting point. Sometimes with companies, they're happy to just have it as a LinkedIn profile rather than having to write a CV, especially passive candidates, the more senior end of the market where they're not actively looking and they're a strong candidate. So, and some companies are happy to have that as a starting point. But just copying a company CVs, it doesn't tend to work usually.
All right, we're right at the top of the hour, and we are officially out of time. But real quick, 1-2 sentence last word from each of you.
I'll jump in and just say separate yourself and communicate, and just network.
I guess from me, one thing I'd emphasize is that every challenge is an opportunity. So keep networking, keep building those relationships. You never know where that next opportunity is going to come from. But most importantly, keep your head up and stay positive, because when you're positive and you're persistent and you're consistent, you can achieve anything.
Yeah, I think one of the key things is kind of alluded to is building that relationship, whether it be a external recruiter or internal recruiter. Over time, whether you're going to go to a conference, you build your relations with those, and that opens up many, many doors to both hire managers and with obviously recruiters as well. So network and build your CV. Make sure you got an active LinkedIn profile, ideally. Make sure it's verified. Make sure you have a personal a photo within the LinkedIn as well, so people can know who you are as well. So a lot of many more things, but that would be a good starting point at least.
Okay, thank you guys. I want to just say thanks to everyone for watching, and to Jane, Daniel, and Mark for bringing their experience and their expertise to the discussion. I think it was really helpful. I'm really glad to see all the questions we got. Probably we'll try and bring some more discussion back to jobs, because there were some really good topics that we never even got to today. If you have a different topic idea or you'd like to be a guest on the Leadership Lab, just message me on LinkedIn. Otherwise, thank you for joining us and have a great rest of your day. Thank you all.
Thanks, Amanda.
See ya.
Thanks, Amanda.